actions are much stronger than words.
Yeah.
I can say whatever. Here I could invent
Right.
whatever, but at the end is what you do every day, how you deal with troubles every day, when we have a nice offer to do something, we don't go away and go straight away and take it.
Yeah.
We assess, does this align with our values? Yes, maybe it brings financial benefit, but it compromises what we stand for, so we don't do it.
Today, sitting here with me is Zineb Hattab, or Zizi, how everyone calls her. Zizi is a trailblazing chef who has redefined the boundaries of vegan cuisine here in Switzerland and around the world. She was born and raised in Spain to Moroccan parents and far removed from the culinary world. She studied and worked as a software developer until she was 24 years old. Zizi, however, had a burning passion for cooking simmering within her that led her to quit her stable job at 24 years old and embark on an extraordinary adventure under the guidance of some of the world's most renowned chefs, including the likes of Daniela Soto-Innes, Andreas Caminada, Massimo Bottura, and Dan Barber. But Zizi didn't stop there. Over the past 4 years, after she came back from New York, Zizi has opened 3 plant-based restaurants here in Zurich: Klee, DAR and COR. After only 2 years in business, Zizi's work has earned her prestigious recognition, including the first vegan chef in Switzerland to be awarded both a red and a green Michelin-Star. And she has also been named a hospitality pioneer by the world's 50 Best 50 Next list. She is also the author of her own cookbook called The Taste of Love, which was nominated for Germany's Best Vegan Cookbook. Zizi's journey is a compelling tale of transformation and marked by her relentless pursuit of culinary excellence, her dedication to sustainable practices, and her commitment to challenging the status quo within the restaurant industry. Welcome, Zizi. It's a true honor to have you here.
Thank you for this introduction, and it's also an honor to be here.
Thank you. Zizi was saying just before we started recording, we should be over delivering and not over promising. So I should not put her too much into the limelight with my intro. Well, I've done already.
Yes, too late.
Too late. First question. You said in an interview, I quickly quote you, it was a desire to feel the human side of life. As a software developer, you don't get to communicate and exchange real human emotions very much. So my question is, transitioning from a software developer to an internationally recognized chef is a monumental shift, not just in career, but in life philosophy, I guess. Could you take us through the pivotal time when you decided to leave behind the world of engineering for the culinary arts? Like, what went through your head during that time? What was it about the human side of cooking that called to you so strongly?
Well, it was not a specific moment. It was actually quite an organic process of maybe being honest with myself, because many of us follow a path to accomplish some expectations that are set by external factors, by the society we live in or the education we receive. And after working for a couple of years as an engineer, as you said, it was very comfortable. I was having a nice paycheck and quite a good lifestyle. I made the most of Switzerland. I was hiking and skiing every weekend. So it was not a bad life. It was just maybe I felt like I had the life of somebody who would retire. I didn't have a strong drive. And now if I look back to the sentence you quote me, I think you can find a passion, or you can find a drive in any job. In my case, I was missing the human side in engineering because I was very specialized on software development and on programming production side, so it was very industrial. I had a few changes with people on the plants, on the industrial plants, but I think food is a way that connecting to people, from the farms to what we do at the restaurants. And I think the restaurants are just a manifestation of wanting to impact people's life. And I thought back then, with my engineering job, I couldn't. And cooking was making me happy. It has changed a lot, the way I understand it, and my role has changed a lot from being in my kitchen trying things and inviting a lot of people to eat, and to what I do now. I have a very different role and a broader understanding of what food can do. Maybe my subconscious knew it back then, but it was not as clear as it is now.
So you said at the very beginning you maybe were not honest to yourself. If I understood you correctly, you were basically already cooking a lot at home and you were inviting friends, and that gave you joy, and something inside you said, like, why not do this full time?
Yeah, I think it's realizing that you don't get enough of something when there is a topic or maybe an art or a way of putting out creativity, an activity. It can be a sport that you don't get enough from, that it doesn't matter how many hours you dedicate, how much you read about it. It's the only thing you want to talk about, and your friends are like, okay, let's talk about something else.
So even at work you were like...
Yes. Yeah. And then you see it's growing in you, and maybe you wanted to have the main character in your life. It is a risk when you have something you really love as a hobby to take it as your job, because jobs come with downsides as well. But I'm happy. I mean, I never looked back and or regretted. But it was a process of letting go of a lot of decisions I made before, studying engineering, understanding in a different way the status that your job gives you. We are not our jobs, and we live in a society where this is very strong rooted. No, if you have a higher education, you're seen as a different. Maybe because I come from an immigrant background as well. But yeah, it's breaking with a lot of social constructs or myths, common myths that we live with.
Was it it sounds almost like an identity shift in a way for yourself. Was that a painful process, or was it like, I don't know, at some point you had to quit your job, I guess? Was that a difficult and painful, or as soon as you did it, you were like, oh wow, why didn't I do this earlier kind of situation? Or how was it for you?
No, I don't like to put it as everything was a path of roses and butterflies. It is hard because I dedicated 4 years to study, and my parents also spent their savings on that. So I came with a responsibility. So yes, you are breaking with some deals that you made or some compromises that you made,
right.
And also with yourself to be okay with what you do, and it is a hard. But for me, the hardest, I think, process has been afterwards. Once I managed to get what I wanted, not to open my restaurant, I think the biggest emotional challenge has been also to let go and to leave space for other people to do the things I really enjoy doing. For example, leading the restaurants. If I can be here, it's because I have amazing staff and an amazing team who has the same values, believes in what we do, and I don't need to be there micro-controlling everything. It's not about me, really.
I'm sure we get to your leadership philosophy as well. Because actually, funny fact, how I actually got to you was because I was in your restaurant DAR, and then we were at the bar having a drink, and then she was asking us, at the lady behind the bar was asking us, like, hey, what do you guys do? And then I talked about the podcast and so forth. And then she was like, you absolutely need to have Zizi on. And that was almost a year ago, I would say. Okay. And she was telling me something like, she used to be a developer, and now she has these restaurants. And then this is kind of how it got rolling as well. So
I didn't
I didn't
know my staff was doing PR for me.
Yeah, exactly, right. No, but I think what I feel, and we come to that later as well, is both at Klee but also at DAR, it has this kind of family feel, and I guess this is somewhat also intentional from your side.
Yes, it is. It is important for us to have a sense of community. I think it's one of humans' basic needs to feel like we belong somewhere. And it's important that the team, firstly the team, and then our guests feel that they belong, that they are seen, that there is space for them in our homes and in our locations. But of course, as I said before, this was not my first plan when I opened Klee. I just
Right.
wanted to have a restaurant and cook.
Right.
But it all evolved into seeing the impact of all these other aspects of gathering people together with a purpose.
So if we go a bit back to kind of this moment when you were still a software developer, and I read somewhere, I don't know if that's true, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I read somewhere that sometimes you also programmed machine from slaughterhouses. So that's a really interesting kind of comparison to where you are now, where you are living plant-based as well. Did that at all play into, like, because you didn't really come into plant-based up until way later. Did you think about that ever? Like, did that?
No,
do you ever
actually,
have this conflict?
and I think this is one of the experiences in my life that gives me hope on people, that people can change. Because if I look back into that version of me I was just coming out of my studies. I graduated, and this was my first job actually as an engineer in Spain. And it was a client which was, yes, slaughterhouses for chickens and turkeys. And back then, I had zero connection to the actual thing that I was doing, which was taking the life of beings, no? And in a very, very industrialized and product-oriented way. So, yeah, when I look back on the things I witnessed, because slaughterhouses and this industry is very, very closed.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
You don't have easy access to see what's in the back. And I was not aware. I was really not connected to it. I saw my family always slaughtering animals at home. It was a normal practice. There is an Eid where we do the lamb. And I grew up in a Muslim household, so this was normal. Sometimes we had chicken, sometimes we had rabbits. I grew up with seeing animals being from an animal to going into the plate.
Yeah.
But in this case, as an engineer, I was totally disconnected to my feelings. It was a job that I had to do, and there was an expected product with a certain efficiency, with a time, all these things that...
It's a project, right?
It's a project, yes. And now when I look back, and it took me a while to realize this paradox. And I always say that the brain works its own, even when you're not aware of it. So maybe it had something to do with the change, but it was not conscious at all. When I decided to open Klee as a vegan restaurant, had no connection with the fact that I worked in the automatization of a slaughterhouse.
So, but if you now say, okay, so you were working on projects, you were a software engineer, and then you love cooking at home, and slowly also, I like the word simmering because I think that's a bit what's going on inside of us.
Yeah.
And then I guess it's the question if we lift the lid and smell. How did you act upon this simmering? Like what? Okay, so you said I am going to look for ways to go into this industry. Like, how did you go about that? What did you do?
Well, if we use your metaphor of the pot cooking, and I would say I started tasting what's cooking on the pot. So I had a lot of guests at home. Yes, I did like tasting menus, and I was experimenting with books. And I mean, at that time there was a lot of YouTube videos of big chefs. And then afterwards, I started on the weekend. I remember when I was still an engineer, I was working in Liechtenstein and Rugel, living in Oberriet, Canton St. Gallen. And I was going on Friday night and Saturday night to work for free in a restaurant in Dornbirn.
Yeah.
And the chef there was like, okay, this lady is coming here. And I was just washing some salads. That's the first time I saw a Paco jet, for example. I really didn't know what was it for. but they allowed me to be there for a few months. So I was working 100% as an engineer, and then on Fridays and Saturdays I was doing
really?
this. Yes.
For free or you?
For free.
For free. Mm-hmm.
Yes, for free. And towards the end of 2014, then I decided, okay, I really enjoy the time I'm there. Let's maybe contact some places to see if I could do it on the side of being an engineer. Like maybe I can reduce to 60% and work for a couple of days in. And one of these places was Schloss Schauenstein in Fürstenau from Andreas Caminada. It's a 3 Michelin-Star. I had no idea of what it meant. It was closed and it had a lot of articles.
Yeah, you were like Googling.
Exactly.
Like,
What is driving distance from Overit. And then, there was this chef with this very famous restaurant, and I was not really aware of what I was doing. I was just following my instincts. So I sent a few applications, and the secretary or the person in charge of back office at Schloss answered me and was like, you can come as an intern, like we have internships, but it has to be 100%.
Yeah.
And we are not sure that if you want to really quit your job as an engineer and do this. And then I thought about it. And
for how long?
Not too long. I don't think, if you think about it too long, then you don't do it.
Exactly.
So I remember I talked to Mark, who is my husband and my partner for 16 years. Like we went to university together. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, I sent this. And he was like, what are you doing? Like maybe start somewhere around learning how to cut onions or continue with this place in Dornbirn. But they're going to say no. Like, and he's usually very encouraging, but he was like, okay, you're trying to play the Champions League when you have no idea how to play. But they answered yes. And once I got the yes, I was like, okay, I'm just going to jump into the pool. So I kind of arranged the whole 2014 of internships. They kind of fell into place. So Bilbao, they could give me in Nerua, Guggenheim, they could give me a slot from January to spring. Then Andreas could give me a slot from spring to September. And then Osteria Francescana in Modena, also a 3 Michelin-Star, could give me a slot to finish the year.
Okay, so that's basically usually what you do. When you start cooking, you do these internships at different places.
I mean, my way was not the kosher way, because people go to school and then the school organizes an internship. We have a lot of interns who come to Klee, DAR. So they have 6 months internship. What I did was for free, was what people used to do. Now there are more regulations and more law behind free labor. So I don't think people do it as much anymore. But it used to be, I would say, 90s, 2000s. It was normal to just go and work for free in a place in exchange of the experience and the learning and the opportunity to be in a place like this. So I remember it was the end of 2013, I gave my notice to my boss, Patrick. I still remember his face. He was like, you're going to go to cook?
You're doing what?
Yes. And he said, okay, you can come back. Like, give it a try, but you can come back. And I guess that's a very privileged place to be when you know that I can fall back into this. Yeah. But I never thought about it.
But it's true what Mark said, right? I mean, it's an interesting development going from like at home, like let's say if we take his metaphor, we're playing a bit on the Spielplatz downstairs where you live, and then you go to Champions League into the big stadium. Like 3-star Michelin is as big as it gets, and some of these chefs that you mentioned is as big as it gets. I mean, the world's best chef. Why would they take you?
I ask myself the same.
Like you never found an answer?
Yes, I think there was a strong, because some people have a lot of experience, but they don't have the right attitude.
Yes.
And I learned afterwards that attitude is very important in kitchens and in such a pressure and stress-driven place with a lot of triggers and a lot of opportunities to misbehave. But I always proved and showed that there was nowhere else I wanted to be.
Yeah.
So I always arrived first. I left last. All the breaks I had, I used them to go somewhere else, to Sweden or to Can Roca or to places. I didn't have holidays for a while. I was using that time to really try to gather as much information as I could. I knew I started later than many who decide to do this when they are younger. So I just I went into sprint mode.
Yeah.
And maybe somehow I could transmit this with my application or my motivation letter that they saw.
So it was a traditional application like everyone else, and somehow you could bring in your application the you could transfer your passion into the letters, basically.
Yes, and it could happen sometimes. I could have shown up there, and then if it doesn't fit, they would let you go. The same as many people do it, and then they disappear after a week because they realize that it's not for them or what they expected. The conditions I had on my first stage was very hard. I went from having my apartment with my husband to living with 9-10 people with one bathroom, like in bunk beds. The conditions that we had as interns were not great. Working 16, 17 hours without getting paid and on a very military environment, even if it was my own language, because I chose to start in Spain.
Right,
because
it's a bit easier, right?
But it wasn't, because there is a slang, there is a way of communicating, there is a tone that I was not used to. There is a kind of code of conduct. It's a very, how can I say it, hierarchical industry, which we are trying to bring down and break. But this is what it was. At that time, I was not there to, hey, I'm going to change the world. I was there to put my head down, learn as much as I could, and survive so I could get to the next stop.
So the switch of attitude I find very interesting, right? I mean, I guess you didn't have the same attitude when you were a software engineer. You were like, or were you always very determined, and you had the attitude of excellence?
I guess the attitude of excellence comes from having to show that you're good at something because you have other things that, like, if I talk about being an immigrant, you're expected to perform certain jobs or to end up in certain parts of society. And my dad always tried to push us to do the best so the other things don't shadow, like the fact that we come from, like, there is Islamophobia and there is this kind of stereotypes. So for my dad, it was important that we outperformed in sports, that we outperformed in studies, in academic, because those are measurable things.
Right.
Like, if I have a honors graduation and you as well, it puts us on the same level.
Right.
I don't think the same way anymore, but it was the way I was.
Yeah. It was the work ethic kind of put into you as well. Yeah.
Yes. I started working very early on my family's business, so I love working. It's not that I am a fan of the hustle culture, but I find the joy and I find the use of having a purpose.
Gives you meaning.
Yes, it gives you a meaning, and this was maybe not verbally explained to me as a child, but by leading by example. My parents put this in our head, in my brothers and me. I have only one brother. But yes, so yeah, performing and being, if I do something, I want to do it the best I can. And this is something I did when I started doing stages, like these internships in places.
So do you remember what you wrote in this letter? Like, what did you try to convey in a letter to Caminada or to some of these other chefs that you wrote to?
I mean, it was not very long. It was just a very honest explanation of my situation, that I had I did engineering, I had a job, but what really made me happy and drive me and gave me motivation was cooking, and I wanted to learn. And I thought, by choosing these places, because it was not random places, they were places where they were driving people from everywhere in the world to come there to try what they were doing. this was the thinking behind. Like Massimo, he finds inspiration in music, in art, and this was something that back then I didn't really understand, how you can translate this into a dish, and that the person who eats it that didn't have this inspiration or these experiences you did can feel it and can connect with it. So this was important for me to understand. Then in Nerua, in Guggenheim, Josean cooks very, very minimalistic and bringing the product itself to its maximal potential. And then with Andreas, when I chose him because he was nearby and close, I was not aware of how much I would learn about the place we are, which is Switzerland, and I was living in Switzerland. And the knowledge and the respect he has for the products that are grown here, and how he has actually brought the culinary scene of Switzerland everywhere. So those were very special places, and I wanted to take the most of them after the ones I've gone afterwards as well. But there is kind of a reason to go to those places.
So it was not just like, as you said in the beginning, it was not the fame, it was more specific ways of how they went about their craft.
Yes, and with Andreas also many things rebuilt afterwards. Like it's a soup, they are very organized. He's very precise and a perfectionist. And he's very close to the farmers. So these are all things that I took with me, which I didn't know from just seeing what he does or reading about him. I lived it because I was there almost 3 years, and I got the opportunity to be like very close to him, traveling with him to do events and visiting the farmers. Maybe the fact that I was an engineer gave me the tools to support him with like the magazine that he was publishing, with the market that he wanted to create, and now it's every year the Fall in Love market in autumn. The Michelin, Foundation is the name, Michelin, where they do internships for people to go everywhere in the world who want to study gastronomy. So I was involved in a lot of things happening besides cooking. And I'm not sure if I would have been able to be useful if I didn't have my background.
So Caminada was also was kind of a mentor figure for you as well. Yeah.
Yes, I would say he was my main mentor and the person who gave me the chance, really, because he saw that I didn't know much.
Yeah.
And he would joke about it and not take it too serious. But then has become a colleague, has become someone who respects me and that I see, and that we can have conversations and talk to each other in the same eye level. And still, when I see him now, like, I ask for advice because, I mean, he has not been doing this for 30 years. And then when I went to New York, I always say that New York was my master's because everything I learned
graduation
kind of cracked down when I was there.
How so?
New York is, I would say, probably the opposite of Switzerland. It's chaos, is contrast. It has an amazing part of arts and music, but at the same time a lot of inequality, a lot of crime, and very raw in your face. When I was working with Dan Barber, I would go home like at 1 or 2 in the morning, and you witness a lot of things in the subway that maybe happen in Switzerland, probably do, but they are hidden or on the corners. It's not so visible. New York is a city that never sleeps. It's 7 days. I came from cooking for 30 guests with almost the same amount of staff to cooking for 300 guests with 5-6 cooks. So it was a big change and very, very hard. But I wouldn't be able to do what I do now if I was not in New York. Because I think after New York, you think that everything is okay.
Everything's
like
easy.
you can do everything. New York either swallows you or throws you away.
Yeah.
And I was lucky that I was able to stay there and survive all the burns and all the challenges of a very raw human side. Like, witnessing how people are undocumented and how they have to navigate this life with having children there, not being able to go back to their countries, because the gastronomy like in New York is basically run or sustained by those people in the back. And also the problems with drugs, the problems with alcohol. Our industry has a very dangerous relationship with the consumption of substances. And I think there it became much more visible to me and real.
What did you learn about yourself in New York?
I had to invest a lot on myself, in the sense of in psychology, on how important it is to break a little bit with my mental limitations. I dedicated a lot of time to study how to work with different kind of peoples, how to approach people with different backgrounds. I would say that until then I had quite an homogeneous environment, a lot of white, male, cisgender professionals who had studied this, knew how to do their jobs. So it was like it's a majority of what high-end or gastronomy is. Like if we talk about fine dining.
Mm-hmm.
But the real, like the restaurants, the diners, the taquerias, this is not how it is. And there, I learned about myself that I have to continuously grow in that sense. I changed my way of thinking from people are lucky that they get to work here to I'm lucky that they choose to work here, and the time that they dedicate or they spend with me, in this case was Cosme, I want to try to make the best of it, and I want them to have a positive impact in their lives. And I think this diverges a lot from what many business owners think, because I remember hearing bosses tell, like, you're very lucky to work here, there is a queue of people wanting your job, we could change you right away, and this didn't resonate with me. That didn't resonate with my values, it didn't resonate with how I value human life and a change between individuals. So there I started creating my own set of values, and because it was the first time that I was actually leading a team.
It was like 30 people or something, right?
Yes, it was a very big team and very diverse on religion, on ethnicity, and on age. As I said, I had the tortillera ladies, which are people who were more close to their 50s, 60s, and I never had people that I was responsible for with this age.
Right.
So there is a different language, there is a different way of negotiating as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to learn a lot of this and how to talk to people who have been time in jail, for example, and I was not exposed to any of this in all these restaurants.
So if you say 300 tables, you are responsible for 30 people, what, like, that's a scale that is many times fold something like Caminada does? Like how many tables does he have at Schloss, or like how big of a team is there, even if you compare the jump that you had to make?
Mm-hmm. I mean, usually these places which are like fine dining, 2-3 Michelin-Star, there is 1-to-1 maybe guests to staff, or even more staff than guests. And in this case, with like bigger places with higher rotation, then you have maybe 20%, 25% is staff from what is the actual volume of what you're doing. It's a very different, I don't think you can compare one to the other. It's there, you're doing two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you are in charge of a bigger brigade, like a bigger crew, it makes a big difference. And even more when it's your first time. I had no idea of Mexican cooking. Like
on top of it.
On top of it, yes. So this person comes. I didn't go through the process of being a a student there or an intern and being a chef de partie and then sous chef. No, I got the whole responsibility from the beginning. And it was a leap of faith from them, from Enrique, Olvera, and Daniela. But for me, it was a challenge because I found resistance. And this was also a very big learning from me too.
When you say you found resistance, what do you mean?
Well, there were people in the team who wanted this position and didn't get it. And there I come. They asked me, I started like the first days to try the food, so I got used to the flavors, to the palate. I couldn't eat spicy.
You did not eat spicy?
No, I didn't.
So they forced you with the spoon?
Exactly. So I had to get trained to be able to taste the food, which is spicy. At the beginning, it was just
and
my
you
burn
don't
was
taste anything else,
no,
right?
my mouth was on fire.
Yeah.
I was sweating and
like,
crying.
I guess could be good.
Yes, but I am supposed to be the person who says what's good and what's not good, and I don't have a criteria. I don't have an experience, so I can understand the feeling of what is this person doing here.
Right.
But of course, they wanted my skill set of that I bring as a person who has studied something else, who has been working in places with other standards, and it was hard. That part, I think, was a big growth for me to understand that it's okay that your team doesn't like you or doesn't, that you need to create trust as well with leading by experience. And I was very honest. I was like, if they would tell me, go to the fridge and bring epazote, I was like, what is epazote? I have never used this herb. I didn't even know it was a herb.
Yeah.
So I would stand in the walk-in fridge, like looking around. Hopefully I see a label that says it. So it was a big breaking of my ego, a big process of learning. Also, sometimes you need to let people go if they are not willing to jump into your bus. Because I didn't want to let this opportunity go, so I really studied a lot and I learned a lot. So in a very short time, I was the person I had to be. Yeah. But I needed them as well to join me, and so we could do it together. And some people didn't, and this was also a process of, okay, letting people go, understanding that it's not on me. They made a choice, and it doesn't fit with what we want to pursue here.
How did you, when you say you quickly became the person you needed to be, how did you figure out what person you needed to be? Was this an intuitive feeling?
It was a balance between being knowledgeable about what we were doing, understanding what the restaurant was, understanding the concept, the food, why are we doing Mexican food in this version of it in the middle of New York, and why is it so important that the team also is diverse and represents what Enrique and Daniela in that moment wanted to represent, because it was not my restaurant, so I had to learn all this. When you work with someone else or when you work for a company, I think it's important that you understand what the company stands behind. And then on the other side, like being the person my team needed me to be there to support them when they struggled. I always say that it's the inverse pyramid.
Can you explain that?
Sure. I mean, there is the traditional way is that the lower or less educated positions are more easy that anybody can do are on the bottom, and then there are different positions on top of each other, or management or responsibilities, and then the boss is on the top, and everybody else is there to serve the boss.
The person at the top.
And for me, it's the other way around. I try to put myself on the bottom of the pyramid and be there for what they need. Try to give them the tools and the space that they can shine on what they love. And if it's on the creative side, on the operational side, combine it with their skills or what they prefer. And then I'm there to support them if they have struggles. Some people that in my current team, for example, are neurodivergent, so they struggle with some situations which we would consider normal, or maybe a simple conversation, or the way we say hi to each other at the restaurant. Like at Klee, everybody hugs each other and everybody's very close. And we have some people who are not so comfortable with this.
Yeah.
So to be able to treat this and to have myself the time to talk to the person or the specialist who can teach me how to deal with this. These are things that if I expect my team to solve all of this or to sort it out or that I don't hear about it, then I'm not able to help them. And with being on the bottom of the pyramid, I'm there for anything they need and to make their job easier.
You carry the responsibility, right, of everybody above you, if you want. Yeah.
It's not that I'm a martyr and I have the responsibility. They chose to work with me in this case or with the company, but I do carry the responsibility to give them the tools to success.
Yeah.
I carry the responsibility to constantly train them. I carry the responsibility to make sure that they can have a balanced life and that I make the conditions that they can live in a good place as well. That leaving a company is not a traumatic process, which I had.
Yeah.
I experienced this. I experienced the feeling of I'm betraying someone because I'm taking a step or I owe them something. And these are things I don't want.
Mm.
But I also had to learn this because if they do this to you, this is what you learn. And then you replicate, like you do the same. So it is an emotional process. And it would be much easier if I just treat them all like numbers.
Right, but that's the interesting part. How did you come to... So you are in a very stressful situation. You need to perform. I mean, it could have... What mostly happens is then you are in survival mode and you look for yourself and ego-driven. Okay, so I need to look good. So, and if I understood you correctly, is while you were going through that, you also flipped the pyramid. How, like, did that come naturally? Did that just happen like this, or you were basically fed up by what you've experienced otherwise, and you wanted to make it different at the same time that you were also in the fire, kind of? So, or
I mean, it was a lot of studying, a lot of reading, and I think knowledge is power. So seeing that there are other ways of doing things. Also, I try to have like an outer body experience a lot. Like
third person?
Yes, exactly. To see the situations from the outside. Because as you say, in stress, the easiest thing when my team is not performing or something is not working is just to burst this frustration or this anger into them, like throw up in them. Yeah. And then they are the ones who feel like shit. And this is what I received a lot. But they don't grow from this. There is fear. Yes, there is fear. There is mistrust. There is insecurities. And since I felt those things and I didn't want anybody else to feel them, I think it's important to also be in touch with your feelings. Then I try to see myself from the outside and have high expectations. I set high expectations for myself, and I always apologize when I don't match these expectations because I know I can do better. And this is also leading by example, because when my team sees that I apologize and I try to do better, and I even ask them what would have helped that I do different or how can I manage this next time, then there is a breach of communication. And many places don't use this inverse mentorship. I'm not a Gandhi or I don't know everything. Right. I have not everything figured out. And also the new generations have very different ways of dealing with life. So...
Yeah, but just as you said, like, you said also at some point that your father was kind of leading by example. Maybe not, it was always like very explicit, but people look, right?
Yeah. I think acts and actions are much stronger than words.
Yeah.
I can say whatever. Here I could invent.
Right.
Whatever, but at the end is what you do every day, how you deal with troubles every day, when we have a nice offer to do something, we don't go away and go straight away and take it. Yeah. We assess, does this align with our values? Yes, maybe it brings financial benefit, but it compromises what we stand for, so we don't do it. And these are all like, we could open 7 days. DAR, it's a huge space. Anybody who works in gastronomy is like, what are you doing? Like opening 5 days in the night and only 2 in the brunch. I'm losing a lot of profit there, but my team has a stable schedule. Everybody has the mornings for themselves, and the house also gets some rest. I believe the space also deserves some peace. So not all my decisions are driven by what they're commonly driven as a business owner or someone with maybe financial goals or. But this has been a process.
Yeah, and people feel that too. Right?
Yeah, and a lot of people want to align their personal values with their work. I think this is why we have quite a stable team, and we don't have so much rotation, and we get quite a lot of applications to work with us. It's because we have strong values that we stand for. They are not just hanging on the wall for being forgotten or as a just a marketing strategy. They are part of our daily decisions and daily conversations. And when this is important for you, then you find that you belong to what we're doing.
So let's come to your next part of the journey. How did you know at Cosme? Did you right after Cosme you went back to Switzerland? Was that the last? So you were at Cosme. How did you know? Okay, I learned my lesson here. I graduated. I did my master's. And how was the switch over then to Switzerland and actually opening your own restaurant, which at that point I guess was then becoming a more and more realistic dream for you?
Yeah. So after a while at Cosme, as I said, I dedicated a lot of the time I was in New York to study and from Harvard Business Reviews on managing teams, to trauma, to why we do the things we do, why we
you
react.
went deep, huh?
Yeah, I went very deep. Yes. And even though my restaurants are not social institutions, and I don't have to do this, but I do feel it as a responsibility to understand a bit how humans interact, because there is a lot of humans and a lot of energy, and we meet new people every day, new guests every day, and this is also draining for the service staff. So to be able to understand what they go through, because in the kitchen you're in your little bubble. Exactly. You don't need to be smiling all the time, or you don't have to swallow some things that are not your fault. No, if somebody comes with a bad mood, we try always to flip it. We try that people, when they come in a bad mood, we manage to change it, and they live in a better place. But yeah, I use this time to study a lot and to kind of build the pillars of what I wanted to be the values when I managed to do my own thing. And New York really didn't fit with with some of the strong values of like having paycheck that you can live with, enough holidays.
Yeah, it's a hustle there.
Yes, it's a hustle. And the gastronomy industry is really hard because you have to open 7 days because of the cost of living there and the inequality between what you earn and what you spend. It's an amazing city, but it has this side that is not very sustainable unless you are rich.
Yeah.
And also being so far away from my family was not something that could work long term. So coming back to Europe was clear. And I think the more self-aware you become and the more connected to your values and what you believe in, the harder it is to do something which doesn't align. And it started to become a burden to not be able to pay what I want to my staff or to give them off as much as they need. And these are small things that kind of small drops.
Up, right?
Yes, exactly. So, okay, Mark and I decided to move back to Europe, and then it was like, do we go back to Spain and open in Barcelona, maybe something, or do we go back to Switzerland? And we did an Excel sheet. pros and cons,
Nice.
what makes more sense. And Switzerland won. We were not going back to Graubünden.
Yeah.
We wanted to have a little bit of a city life. Sorry. Because this is something we really enjoyed in New York. The diversity and the possibility to travel anywhere. And Zurich was the most diverse place, we thought, in Switzerland. So, we came back to Switzerland. Mark was working for a Swiss company also when we were in New York. So it was easy to relocate. And I started looking into spaces. But it was not clear that it's going to be Klee and it's going to be plant-based. I looked at very random spaces, from production kitchens to windows where you could sell takeaway. And then I saw Klee, like I saw the location in Wiedikon.
Dreierlei at the time.
It was Dreierlei, yes.
This monkey.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yes. And somehow when I walked into the place, for me it was clear that this was... Yes, and it's hard to put it into words but it just clicked. And then also the concept started taking shape. Not that it was vegan still, but that it was going to be a lot of the influences that are part of who I am. And Klee, as the house it is, which is like 200 years old building in between Weststrasse and Zweierstrasse, very Swiss. And the chairs, everything is like very traditional. It's like a dining room at home.
Like a bite. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This will bring the sense of place and time that it's important for me with whatever I do. And then a month before opening Klee, I kind of had cold feet. I was like, why am I doing this? Yes, I love cooking, but I'm going to cook less and less of being an owner because there are other responsibilities. And it's a financial stretch as well, a risk. So I started like going around it like, is it the right thing to do? Am I just doing it for myself to be another chef and to be all about me? And the plant-based thing is something I started to learn about in New York. In Cosme, a big part of the menu was vegetarian and vegan, even though we always had proteins, like a lot of fish and some pieces of meat. But in Mexico, there is a big culture of vegetarian. Yeah. The same as in Morocco. At the end, is places with lower resources as well, where meat, it's a reason for celebration and luxurious thing. So there is very rich vegetarian and vegan dishes. And when I opened Klee, I checked what am I bringing, what am I doing, what is the impact that this place is going to have if we use milk and like all the products from vegetables to eggs to dairy. A bit, what is the impact of water? What is the impact of the CO2 emissions?
But by the time you were doing all of this research, you already had the place, or no?
No, the place, I remember I signed in December, and we opened in January.
2019.
19, yes, right before COVID.
Yeah, great.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So you were. It
was all kind of parallel. Yeah. So I kind of gave the word for the place, but I didn't sign the lease. Yeah. When you have to sign the lease, it's like, okay, this is becoming real.
Time, yeah. But you had to build a team as well beforehand, right?
Yes.
And create a menu. So that was also happening in parallel.
In parallel, yes.
You kind of realized that just the restaurant was not enough for you to go into all this risky business. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then understanding the impact that opening a restaurant had, I said, okay, maybe we can do something that it's not there. At that time, I already had Alessandro, who is the head chef at Klee. We worked together at the Schloss.
Okay.
And together in the station.
That's nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I had Bernd, who was in front of the house as well. People that, like Bernd, I never worked with him, but I explained him the concept and he was like, okay, let's try.
The vegan concept.
Yes. And I just made up my mind very quickly, like I did with deciding to quit. And even though it's something that, as you said, simmers, at the moment that I make the decision, there is no going back.
Yeah.
So I told Ale, hey, it's gonna be. He says I didn't tell him. He said that he read it on the website.
He learned on the website.
Yes, I think I told him.
That's really funny.
But he keeps saying that he read it in the website, like that's gonna be a neighborhood plant-based restaurant, and he was like, okay.
Good to know.
Yes. But then his girlfriend is anyway vegan for a long time, so for him it was nothing crazy.
Yeah.
My husband was like, our fridge is full of cheese. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
You just went to visit Willy Schmidt, which is one of the biggest cheese producers.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. I guess I'm very lucky because my husband just goes with whatever.
Like puts up, is like, oh, really? Okay. Yeah, but he asks, like,
yes.
are you sure? Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
So I remember I gave all this cheese to Bernd, to the person who opened with us in front of the house, and I would transition myself. I said, okay, if I'm gonna try to cook vegan, I'm gonna try to eat myself plant-based, and this was a struggle because I tried to eat in many places in Zurich, and it was not very. There was not a lot of options. The things I had were not done with a lot of love. It was just sides of something or some boiled carrots and broccoli. So I said, okay, there is a big gap here to fill, and I believed I had the experience and the technique and the know-how to bring plant-based to how I like to eat.
Yeah.
Because I like to serve what I like to eat.
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, it's going to be plant-based. Our purpose kind of found me. It was not me looking for a purpose. Yeah. It's not that I'm the vegan queen or anything like this. It was, I ate everything all my life until I was 30. But I learned more about it. I studied more about it, understood, because I used to hate vegans to come to the places I cooked because they would show up without letting us know.
Complicated, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it as a complicated thing. I had empathy for those who say I eat everything. But then this also flipped. And now I see that people are actually doing a sacrifice. Because I love shrimps and I love cheese. But I'm making a sacrifice for the greater good because I love the planet we live in and I love diving and seeing animals. So it kind of doesn't make sense that I support the industrial fishing. So I went from having empathy and wanting to have guests who eat everything to shifting and, okay, those who decide that they actually want to eat from farmers who are getting well paid and they actually want to eat from products that are not damaging the planet. I understand the choice now. Yeah. And I was disconnected the same as I was disconnected from the slaughterhouse. Right. I think once you allow yourself to feel and to try to understand why people make certain choices, then you can connect the dots. And this is a very personal journey. I don't think anybody can turn you vegan, or we just try to inspire people to eat more veggies through love. So,
but then you basically, you didn't have much experience in creating vegan-based menus, right? No. And then so you had to do that from scratch somehow. Like how? I think most people that are listening or watching this, they don't really know how a menu gets made. So like what do I have to imagine? So you take the decision and people learn it on the website that you took this decision. And then is this you at home trying stuff out? Is this like meetings with other people and like thinking about it? Like how from the decision, and I think this was pretty not that much far out from actually opening the restaurant. It's like, what happens there? Like, can you tell us a bit how that works?
Yes, I mean at that time, it was basically me, and I would write the menus on my laptop and then test. The menus I had created before with some time in advance had animal products, and then I had to erase
so you adapted
that.
them basically.
Exactly, yeah. I erased that. But as you said, I didn't have much experience. So when I look now at the food I was cooking, I was like, people were very nice to come and eat. And it was good, but it was not
It was not elaborate
yes,
yet.
yes. It was a lot of, this is how I know how to do it. So I kind of changed the, I substitute this by this.
It was creative.
Huh?
It was creative.
Yes, yes. But without a base or without really an identity behind, which is what came with time. I think also COVID, even though it was a terrible thing, it helped me a lot because it was like a stop. We opened for, I think, 7 weeks or something like this, and then we had to close because of COVID.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if we would survive because this was not part of the business plan to close like that. Luckily, we were in Switzerland and we got a lot of support. But this time was like, okay, I have been these few weeks just going with the flow and trying to make it work. The restaurant was full from the beginning, so we didn't really have time to test and trial stuff. And also the team was new, as you said, so it was a lot of new things. So I was just going through a tunnel, hoping to get somewhere. And this break with COVID allowed me to step back and see that I'm making the same mistakes I didn't want to do, like working crazy hours, not thinking about what we're doing, and not having actually a concept behind the food. Yes, it's vegan, and people are liking it, but what are we trying to bring? What are we trying to communicate? And with some time, thank God or the universe, this kind of took shape. Also, I have Alessandro, who is like my brother, and I'm very lucky that he was there from day one, so I could bounce back and forth ideas. He's also an extremely talented chef, and he's also the reason that Klee is a success, because he has the same mentality of constant change and constant grow, and he's very connected to the farmers. So when you ask how is the menu created, we get a list from our farmers of what's available, of what they're going to harvest, and then we create the menu around it. Of course, us being chefs know more or less how the seasons work, so we can get ready for them. We know that soon the peas are going to come, for example, that spargel is going to come, and then the berries are going to come. But we follow the lead from the farmers. And sometimes guests don't understand why, for example, we don't have zucchini until very late, because they see it in the supermarket. But if it was very rainy and there was no conditions for the zucchini to grow here, then we don't get zucchini. Because we try to use only fresh produce from our farmers. And then sometimes I travel somewhere and I get inspiration from something I try, from something I see, and I bring it back and I talk to the team. Now the team has grown and it's 3 places. So it's a lot of collaboration with the teams on what we want to create. So everything, like the 3 places, are very much connected to my identity. DAR is Moroccan Spanish, and it's an homage to my roots and the food I ate at home. Then COR is where I like to go when I'm in Barcelona. I like to go for pinchos and a glass of wine. And Klee, if those 2 are like roots of where I am, who I am as a tree, then Klee is really the leaves and the branches. So everywhere I go now in the present, and also the what I read, what sometimes it's just walking and something comes up. So at Klee, it doesn't need to have a connection to my roots, but more about my whole experience, and also Ale's experience. And in this case, Mona is in the front of the house, or Kati is in charge of the non-alcoholic pairings. So it's a combination of the people who are there, with this red thread of me that goes through the 3 places. Because at the end, if we're realistic, people can come and go. No, my staff, I'm very grateful while they are with us, but at some point they will go. So it's important that I can stand behind what we serve. Because when it's very good, it's me, but when it's very bad, it's also me. So I like to know everything that I serve in every place and be involved in all the creative process. And then there is spaces where I have decided to let go, like
Which was hard for you, you said in the beginning, right?
Yes, from being the one who decides how the logo looks, which is the font that we use on the website, and which is the pillow that we're going to put, to just take some steps back. And maybe Lisa is much better than me on choosing which plants work in the restaurant. And it's okay, it's nice. But it was a process of also wanting to always be there and understanding that it's not always good that I'm there, that they actually grow and are better when I'm not there. That was, I think, a trigger, because when I opened Klee, I was always at Klee. Klee was not open if I was not there. And then DAR came, and I could not split myself.
Right.
And that is a baby. You have to think about restaurants as babies, no? Yes. They, at the beginning, they need you a lot. You need to be there constantly, and they are all different personalities, but they have the same values. And there was no choice. I had to let Klee go and allow Alessandro to take on the responsibility, make the decisions, make mistakes, make better decisions than me, and be okay with all of it. Yeah. So I think the nicest part was seeing Ale growing so much in that period, which made it all make sense. Yeah. So it was beautiful, but also painful.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I want to go a little bit more into your philosophy as well. I mean, you mentioned a lot about like leadership, soil to table, kind of this plant-based eating. But I want to start with another quote that you mentioned, either in an article or an interview, and that's, I feel that you can be successful if you truly believe in something, when you're dedicated to your craft and work hard. So, I mean, we started this interview at you being a software developer, and then you kind of, pushed your way all the way forward to where we are today with 3 restaurants. You have some exciting projects, also, but even a Paduz place, which is like a big luxury hotel. So there's exciting stuff coming. You barely started. And what does this mean to you? Like, do you also see that in other people? Like, is that something that you try to instill in other people? Like, if you believe in something and you work hard, you can achieve almost anything.
I think it would be unfair to not take in account the socioeconomic part of where we grow up, or where we are, or if we have access to healthcare, if we have access to basic.
Yes, you were in Switzerland.
Exactly. Yeah. I was in Switzerland. I am in a privileged place, and it's very easy to say if you believe in something, it will work.
Yes.
No, it's not. We are not all raised on the same conditions with the same resources, but I think you can find purpose, and you can find something that drives you with the most simple tasks of everyday life. This is a little bit more of a Buddhist way of thinking, no? From washing your dishes at home, no? So I try to bring this to my team, yes. And I think it makes a difference if you focus on what you're doing instead of having a focus on everything else, on very much external social media, or you kind of lose yourself or your focus. You kind of lose what you do, the intention on what you're doing. When I say this, I mean, if you decide that you want to dedicate yourself to be an ultra runner, then there are going to be a lot of sacrifices you're going to want to do, have to do, in order to pursue that. You cannot eat McDonald's every day, and you're going to have a specific diet and to train a certain. So for me, working hard and being focused and understanding that there is a sacrifice you have to do, it will lead you further than wanting everything or not focusing or being more focused on what somebody else is doing. So I know it's a very abstract answer to your question, but I think it's not a simple thing. Yeah. Success, it's very different, looks very different for you than it looks for me or for someone else.
And maybe it has a lot to do also with what you mentioned a couple times now in this conversation, is even feeling yourself, like what is even going on, like what am I thinking about my actions, what am I thinking about on a daily basis, do I like what I'm doing, and all of these kind of things, right?
Yeah, I think it's easy to lose because there is so much external factors that push us towards that, to just go into robotic mode of I wake up, I go to work, I watch something on Netflix or I consume something, and another day. And we kind of lose this dialogue with ourselves of, is what I'm doing making me happy? And what does happiness mean as well? From the external world or from another point of view, you see my career and you see that I have a very successful career. I opened 3 restaurants in a very short time, and I have a lot of external recognition, but you don't know what's actually going in my private life. You don't know if I had health issues or if I struggled with mental health. So I think it's an easy statement to judge what somebody else is doing, and it's an easy path to disconnect with what you are doing. I don't like to assume anything or to judge anybody. I don't think that someone who is working really hard and is not achieving what they want, it's because they're doing something wrong. Maybe it's not the right place, the right time, the right environment. But that doesn't take credit from the fact that they are really trying very hard.
Do you still connect today with yourself, and if so, how?
Yeah, I like to check on myself. How it helps me a lot to read and then to kind of reflect on what I read and what did it change on the way I think. I try to have very fast behavioral change, which I think is the hardest thing to change on humans, is when they go into a habit or they tend to do something to change this. So I think this is something that should be taught in school, to be able to adapt.
Can you explain that a bit further, like fast behavioral change? What
Yes.
do you mean by that?
For example, if you have a way of asking for things and the people you work with ask you to change this because it has a negative or non-beneficial impact on them, it is not easy for you to change something you have done all your life or that you have your reasons to do in a way. And many times you would take it personal and you would take it as an attack to who you are, or it's your personality. And for me, it's important to understand that life is easier than we make it. We make it complicated, and we can change from one second to the other. And it doesn't mean that I don't have a personality. It doesn't mean that I don't have an identity. But I'm also open to become better and to be beneficial to the people around me. So to have a bigger overview. And behavioral change is being able to change the ways that you act and the things that you believe are rooted to the person you are, or it makes, like, my parents are Moroccan and I grew up in Spain, and I'm supposed to be very loving and cheerful, and my gender also has some things that I'm supposed to do, have this maternal role. But maybe some things that I do as a maternal role are not helping. So I'm okay with letting them go. And I think behavioral change is underestimated in society, that we are able to let these things go that hold us back.
It also means, and that seems something that a skill that you developed is also, you kind of need to listen and you need to be open while you listen, whether that's listening to yourself, what's going on, or also to other people in the end. Otherwise, you don't even know what to change, right?
Yeah, we need to listen more. And many times we are listening, but already thinking of what we're going to answer. So we're not really listening. And so to listen, to reflect, stand back, and then answer if necessary. Sometimes it's not even needed to answer. But I think everybody should listen more. Yeah.
You said also knowledge is power, and it seems to me while we discussed your whole journey to where you are today, you always, when you faced a new challenge, whether that's within yourself, like what is the meaning of this restaurant, and then you went into plant-based hard, right? Or you came up with challenges at Cosme with leadership. You always went deep into books, into literature. What have other people experienced? Probably also asked people about it. Like, how do you think about acquiring knowledge? Like, is that for you? Like, do you, when you try to learn something new, does it come natural to you? Are you like, okay, so I'm now obsessed about this topic, and I'm just gonna read everything? Or like, how do you approach a new topic? Because you seem to reinvent yourself.
It's like the Matrix.
Over and over.
I know about this now.
Exactly, like, right? How would you describe that for yourself? Also, the statement, right? Knowledge is power.
I think thanks to experience as well, how knowledge has impacted my decisions, how knowledge has made me act in different ways. If I look backwards to, as I said, as an outer body experience, to how I used to react, when I had a conflict situation on my first year in the kitchen, I was very impulsive. I took everything super personal, and the result was friction, was not helping anybody, was very painful for myself. And seeing that by learning how to deal with my emotions, how to understand why somebody's saying something in a specific way, why am I triggering someone, that I changed the way I act, and this had a direct impact on the result. This is not my quote, this is as simple as you can only change yourself. But seeing it and witnessing how it actually works, that you build a completely different culture in your company by changing yourself, this is what also gives me the hunger of learning more. What else can I do myself that will have such a strong impact around me and on the people I attract to my life and the business they attract and the opportunities they had. So I think this is one of the things that drives me to learn more and more, is by seeing the impact it had in my life. From connecting with people, to having more empathy, to being able to give space to maybe some people who would struggle to work in gastronomy, or people who have been thrown from place to place without letting them be who they are. So this is giving me always motivation. And then there is the other aspect of food, of being obsessed, as you said, or very anal and wanting to know everything about a certain technique or Korean cuisine, and then my focus flips into Ghana, what do I do there? And so yes, I'm a little bit kind of anal in that sense, but this is also something my husband is like, okay, now.
But he knows you.
Yes, exactly. I had not so long ago, I was reading everything about like finance, which is something that I don't really care about, but for some reason I found a book that I liked, and then this book from another one, and another one, and then the only thing I was talking to him was about assets, and I was like, who is this person? And you're not going to switch careers now again. But I go from obsession to obsession, and I try to hold into the information that can help me in my daily life.
From everything we talked about, how would you define meaning in your life? Like, what gives you meaning?
I think having an impact on the people around me gives me a meaning. Is something that makes me happy. a positive impact, of course.
Mhm.
But yeah, sometimes when I'm sitting in a DAR in a table and it's like before we open, and to see how people interact with each other, the team, and that they have this safe space, that they are willing to go. At the end, we are all energy and we are all exchanging energy as well. And knowing that I'm going to go to the restaurants and have a positive exchange of energy 99% of the times. And to see how when they start, sometimes when they come from places where they, I don't know, were either physically abused or they didn't have great conditions, and that they slowly open up and you see a whole transformation of this person that opens up. And
It's like a flower.
yes, this is amazing. And then with the farmers as well, to have the opportunity to work together. So for me, people give me a strong meaning to my life and motivation. And when I talk to the guests and they say that we have changed the way they see vegan food, that they want to try to eat more vegan, that they never thought vegan food could taste like this. And yeah, it's opening conversations, opening doors, possibilities. This gives me, and that we do it through love. We don't do it through shame. We don't do it through, hey, you're the worst because you're eating meat. It's now, look, we found this thing that we really love and we want to share it with you, and that you are open to connect with it and maybe change the way you saw it. I remember some weeks ago I was in St. Moritz, because as you said, we are doing the pop-up in Bad Roots, and there was a table. They were from Saudi, and it was a couple who travels around the world, and they were like, I hate vegans. Like the guest was telling
Is that
me.
that?
Yes. I was like, I always hated vegan food. But
What
then
does that even mean? Yeah.
exactly, it's a very strong statement,
Uh-huh.
because you eat apples and strawberries. I'm sure
Right,
you
yeah.
like a lot of vegetables, but I think it's this
concept. in people's
concept
minds.
of vegan as somebody who is telling you that you're doing something
Right.
wrong.
It's like missionary.
Exactly,
Right?
missionary, or yeah, you said it right, a missionary, and that makes you feel bad.
Yeah.
It's triggering you.
It's like
Exactly.
Mhm.
So he had these strong statements, and I was just listening. But then he said, and then this was one of the best meals I ever had. We are mind blown. They even wrote a letter 2 days after, because they were guests in the hotel, like saying thank you and that it was unforgettable. So to see in 2 hours that you can have this impact by taste, because taste doesn't lie. Like I can talk, my staff can talk and say whatever, but your connection with your senses is very intimate and unique, and we cannot interfere there. So to see this is very nice, and it gives me a lot of hope. And and the team also, when they witness this every day and they have this conversation, it gives them the meaning.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. The very last question on this podcast is always a challenge to the audience that is listening or watching this podcast. It can be anything. It can be something huge, a big change, or it can be something they can do every day. A challenge that you would like to give people that are listening to this podcast.
I would say to audit your power as a consumer. I think everything we put our money into has an impact. It's like a butterfly impact. And from the soap you decide to buy to the food that is the main topic for me, but also the clothes, just to take a second of your time every time you put something in your basket. Yeah, this is an industry you want to be supporting.
Beautiful. All right, take an inventory of what you buy and decide for yourself where you're going to put your voice, right?
Yes, own your power.
Zizi, thank you very, very much for this conversation. It was great to have you here, and for all your open sharing. Hope to see you soon again.
Thank you for having me. It was
Thank
a
you,
pleasure.
Zizi.